Hey everybody, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and in our webinar, if you signed up for it, for the Praxis PLT, all grade levels. So the 5621, 5622, 5623, 5624, and the 5625. This webinar is going to help you with all of those exams. Now, if you are taking the PPR or another exam that isn't made by ETS and is not a Praxis exam, this webinar is still going to help you. If you're a new teacher and you're trying to figure things out, this webinar is going to help you. This is a really versatile subject area. And so if you're interested in being a teacher, just starting out, trying to pass your exams, whatever, this is a great webinar for you to start in. So I have some people in the chat. I have Tamara, Veronica, Bambi, Ashley, who were early this morning. Welcome. Let me know that you guys can hear me okay and see me in the chat. I will not be chatting, but I do have a colleague in the chat whose name is Yana, and she will help answer any questions you have. So if you're in the chat, that means that you are signed up for the actual webinar. If you're watching me on Facebook or YouTube, the way to sign up for the webinar and get the free study guide that came with this webinar is to click the link in the description and just use your email and name, and you'll be taken to a thank you page. And there's a link there to join, and you'll also get access to the free study guide. So again, looks like everybody can hear me. Great. Today we're going over the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching, PLT, and we're doing all grade levels. And when you signed up for this webinar, you received a free study guide. And I'm going to be projecting that on my screen today. So you do not have to rush and download it. You can download it later and go through it, whatever. When this webinar is over, you are going to get an email that has the replay and any other resources I talked about during the webinar. So you're going to get everything. Don't worry about it. Just pay attention to me. Like you all say with your kids, don't worry about taking notes. Don't worry about your paper. Just pay attention to me. And when it's over, you can go and access all of that stuff. Okay. So you will get a follow-up email. Also, for those of you in the webinar, you're going to get an offer code that will take 20% off your purchase today. So it can help you, if you want to buy a course or a book or whatever, that'll help you today. So I do free webinars pretty much every Saturday. Today, we're doing the Praxis PLT. I love doing these webinars because I get to teach and I love to teach. Let me show you what came with this webinar and where you can get more resources, and then we'll get into the presentation. So if you are, let me just share my entire screen. If you signed up for the webinar, you got this free Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching study guide. In it are 10 practice problems and detailed answer explanations. You also have 2 constructed response, one for elementary, which will cover the pre-K3 through K6 PLTs, and one for secondary. Now, I recommend, even if you are taking the elementary, let's say you're taking the Praxis PLT 5622, I would still do the secondary one. It's not going to hurt you to understand, all of the different constructed responses. Now, if you're taking the 5625, those of you who are in states doing the 5625, that's all grade levels, and you do not have a constructed response. However, I recommend doing the constructed response when we do it here together so that it'll help you be a critical thinker. It'll help you with your multiple choice, because we're going to go through a lot of important information, and that's all going to help you here. So this is the free study guide. I'm going to go through it. We're going to do 2 constructed responses today. You're going to learn how to write quickly, succinctly, and cohesively for this exam, because there is a constructed response portion. And then if you need more, I do have a full study guide. Now I'm displaying the 5622 here. Let me just zoom in a little bit. There we go. This is our most popular because they're more elementary education teachers than any other teachers. But we have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. We also can help you if you are looking for Praxis 5625. We basically have you buy the 5622, and then we give you the 5624 for free, and it covers all content areas. These exams are basically the same, and the books are all the same. There's just a few nuances that are different. So don't go buying double books. Just get the book you need. Don't say, oh, I want more. Let me buy 2 PLT books. I'll buy the 5621 and the 5622. No, that's a waste of money. Just get the one book for your particular exam. Really quick, just want to go over how much more comprehensive this is. You can see that this book is 277 pages. The digital book is linked up. So when you buy the digital book, you can click on the table of contents and it'll take you straight to, where you need to be. Lots and lots of information in this book. Today, we're just touching on a little bit, but this book has lots of information and tons of practice test questions. At the end of each section in the book, I have practice problems for you. And then I have a full practice test at the end of the book itself. I'm just trying to go to that right now. As you can see, here's 10 practice problems for content category 3. You can see these are just for content category 3 and detailed answer explanations. And then, of course, I have to get through the constructed response because we have very detailed constructed responses and samples here. And then, oh my gosh, this book is way longer than I anticipated. Hang on. Where's my practice test? There it is. And the full practice test here that has, I believe, 120 questions. No, 70 questions, sorry, plus your constructed response. And remember, when you buy our books or when you use our free study guides, please read the detailed answer explanations. It's going to help you, even if you get it correct. There's lots of information here that's really going to help you with other questions. So we tell you why it's right. We tell you why the others are not right. And it's like a whole other chapter in the book. So I highly recommend you read that. But today we're going to be working from this free study guide. Super awesome as well. You can just use our free stuff. A lot of people just use our free stuff. Okay. One other thing I want to share with you really quickly is where you can get a couple of extra things. Those of you who are in the webinar right now, you've already signed up for the webinar and you're getting all of this stuff. But if you go to my website here at KathleenJasper.com, you can get the full study guide, Praxis PLT, here are all the levels, or the online course. So where's the PLT? There it is. The online course comes with the digital study guide. So don't buy the digital study guide and the online course. You get everything in the online course. Now, if you already purchased the study guide from either our website or on Amazon, you can send us proof of purchase if you would like the online course. You may like today's presentation and you might think, well, I want the online course. That's fine. You already bought the book. Send us proof and we will add that. We will subtract that from the price of the course and you'll get a discount. So we'll apply that to the price of the course. You can see here we have them for every grade level there. Okay. Now, some new things I'm doing are audio courses. If you're taking a different exam, I've got some audio courses here. I'm working on an audio course for the PLT. It's not ready yet. And then, of course, we have tons of free webinars. I have lots of free webinars coming up. Praxis Core is next week, and then ESOL is after that. And then I have 5001 going after that. So I'm constantly doing free webinars. So be sure to check back. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. I'm going to talk a little bit more where you can find some stuff, but let's talk about this exam in particular. The PLT assesses your ability to just be a teacher. It's not content specific. Now, there are grade levels. You do have the pre-K through third, the K through 6, the middle school and the high school. And if you're taking the 5, 6, 2, 5, you have everything, right? But really, it's all the same. The test specifications are identical for all the tests. And you're basically going through several different major skills, okay? And these major skills are all about how to just be a teacher. It's not about math. It's not about science. It's not about, there's some reading in there because everybody should be a reading teacher, but it's about just students as learners. That's content category 1. The instructional practices, that's in content category 2. Assessment is content category 3. Professional development, leadership and community, that's content category 4. And then content category 5, if you're not taking the 5, 6, 2, 5, are the constructed response. So basically, this test is to assess your ability to be ethical, to understand students and how they learn. There's classroom management questions because the state wants to know that you're going to be able to manage your classroom. There are some reading in the content area questions because no matter what you teach, it is usually the state's position that you should be pushing content area reading in your classroom. And a lot of it just has to do with good practices. Now, one thing that I've seen people get kind of messed up on this exam is because we tend to think, if you're a brand new teacher, we tend to think how we were taught when we were kids. So I was born in 1978. I came up through elementary school and, the 80s, middle and high in the 90s. It was a different time back then. So we did some different practices that teachers thought were good. We've evolved in education, and some of those practices are still good, but we have different ways of dealing with behavior and different ways of dealing with students with disabilities and things like that. And so I encourage you to read the book and follow a lot of my videos in terms of discipline and classroom management and stuff like that. Because if you're older like I am, that's not going to line up really exactly the way when we were taught. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, the first few years, they still paddled in school. So I think up until third grade, they were still, the principal could paddle you. And some people believe they should still do that. I don't. I will say that. I do not believe that is a good practice, but that's the way it was. So things have changed. So try not to use too much of your own experience when you're answering these questions, because there will be some gotcha questions on there. You want to use the best practices that are aligned to research now, right? And we're going to go through that here. But a lot of it has to do with positive behavior supports, focusing on positive behaviors. Anything in the answer choices that sounds punitive or negative is not good. It's not the answer, okay? Good classroom management does not mean you're sending kids out of the room constantly. We have to figure out how to manage our classrooms in our classroom as the teacher, right? So practice routines and procedures, good word on the exam, okay? Focusing on expectations and explicitly telling students what you think, you know what I mean? And what you want. So that's very important. I'm going to show you all of this in context, but that's going to be very helpful for you. Think of just good words, positive. Anything negative is not the correct answer, okay? What are other things? Oh, what I encourage you to do, and I'm going to show you this in context as well. When you get to those long scenario questions, you're going to want to work backwards. I have a lot of videos on working backwards, how to use the answer choices first to zero in on good words, eliminate bad words. This is a good test to do that because there's going to be a lot of teaching scenarios. And if you're brand new to teaching, you're going to be like, I don't know. All 4 of these answer choices look good to me. There's one right answer, unless it tells you to choose all that apply, but typically there's one correct answer. All right, let's hop in so I can just talk to you about it. Let's go to my screen share here. Okay, so we're talking about the Praxis PLT, 5621, 5622, 5623, and 5624. And then also this one. If you're a 5625 test taker, it's okay, just follow along. If you want to buy our resources, I recommend getting this book and then emailing us, and we will get you that book, and it'll cover everything. If you just need one of these tests, the 21, 22, 23, 24, please don't buy multiple PLT books. You're going to be getting the exact same book, except for a little bit of difference in the practice test questions, but not enough for you to spend all that money. Okay, just buy the one that you need. And the online course, the same thing. Now, if you're a 5625 person and interested in the online course, we'll give you the 5622 online course and then fix it up so you get all of it. So don't worry about that. All right, let's go to number 1 on our free study guide here. I'm going to jump around a little bit on the study guide, but this is number 1. You can just follow along with me. Or you can follow along in your study guide. If you don't have the study guide in front of you, no big deal. Just follow along with me. It's totally fine. All right. So I'm going to start with the answer choices first. Remember, I told you I like to work backwards, and this test is really good for working backwards. A, fill out a worksheet by labeling parts of the cell. Nope. Worksheet's a bad answer on this test. Do we use worksheets? Absolutely. We use worksheets. But the position of the state and the people building this exam is that worksheets should not be the fundamental way in which we engage students. And labeling is a low-level skill. And we want to be working on higher level skills here. Labeling is an identify skill. So we want to cut that out. I'm going to say no just for the word worksheet. Okay, I'm suspicious for worksheet. B, build a model of a cell and label it. Again, labeling. Now, building is pretty cool. Building, that's hands-on. But we still have this label, low-level skill here. I'm going to cross it off. I'm not in love with it. C, write a comic strip about a cell and all the adventures it encounters. Now, this is application of skills. Students have to understand the cell and write a comic strip about it. It's creative thinking. It's critical thinking. I like C. And D, draw a picture of a cell and label its parts. Notice, think like a test maker, guys. I always say this. labeling, label, label. 3 of the same skills in the answer choices. You can't have 3 of the same answer choices when you only pick one. The one that stands out is write a comic strip. Now, beyond the fact that we have label, 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 let's talk about Bloom's taxonomy here. Now, some of you may already know this, so, just bear with me here. But Bloom's taxonomy, and I have this in the book, I do a modified Bloom's where I have more levels, but basically down here is identify, label, remember. These are low-level skills. Now, do we need these skills? Absolutely, we need these skills, especially when we're just starting a unit. Our objectives might be students will identify parts of a cell. Okay, that's important because before they can start understanding how they work and writing a comic strip about them, they have to first understand that there's a nucleus, there's a ribosome, there's a mitochondria, and all of that stuff. I taught science, so I can rattle those off, those of you who are not science people, but those are parts of the cell, if you can remember from back when you were in 5th grade. And those skills are important, but they're low level. They're down at the bottom. Then we get to the second part of the pyramid, and that is like comparing things, taking 2 things and finding comparisons or contrasting them or categorizing something, right? So we might put like prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells and the different ways in which, we might do a Venn diagram or we might do a compare and contrast. Now we're not just identifying, we're comparing. So it's kind of 2 steps in the brain, right? A little bit more complex. Up here is where we want to push students up that Bloom's taxonomy. And that is creative thinking, critical thinking, analyzing, evaluating, and application. Writing a comic strip about a cell, I have to know about the cell. I have to take what I learned in these first 2 pyramid levels and apply it. This is higher order thinking. C is the best answer here. Let's read the question. Students in a 5th grade class are learning about parts of and functions of cells. Which of the following activities would be most effective in supporting creative and critical thinking? Again, labeling is identifying. Label is identifying, not critical thinking. Writing and application and analyzing and evaluating is critical thinking. That's why C is the best answer. You'll see this a lot on this exam. They want you to move kids towards critical thinking, and they want to know that their new teachers understand the difference between low-level thinking and questioning and high-level thinking and questioning. So you'll get better at this as you stay in the classroom long enough. You'll learn how to push your kids up and get them thinking critically. A lot of people, I have a funny story about labeling parts of the cell. Let me stop sharing here. So there was a charter school that was opening up, and they wanted to show like how much more rigorous their curriculum was compared to the public schools. And I'm a public school advocate. Like, I love public school. Anyway, they were showing on Facebook 2 worksheets, and it was the skeleton. It was a skeleton. Okay. And one worksheet was from a public school. I guess some kid brought home a skeleton to label its parts. And maybe there were 10 things that the skeleton had to, you have to label the femur. And I don't remember. It was like a bunch of different bones. Okay. It was probably a 2nd grade or 3rd grade worksheet, something like that. So there were 10 things to label. The charter school one had 20 things to label. So it had extra bones you had to label. But as someone who understands skills, I know that it's just labeling a worksheet. It doesn't matter how many things you have to label. That doesn't make it more rigorous. Labeling is still a low-level skill. So what they were trying to say is, look at our labeling worksheet. It's so much better than the public school's labeling worksheet. Send your kid to our school. And I'm thinking, it's labeling. Like, it doesn't matter. It's the same exact skill. It's a low-level skill. Like, you're not any better or any worse. You just, like, that obviously shows that the curriculum department doesn't understand the difference between low level and high level thinking. And I just kind of laughed a little bit. And I thought I'd use that today with that labeling exercise. Remember, we used to do that a lot. I remember having to take an atom. Remember those atoms we built with the styrofoam balls? And we would put the toothpicks on them and stick them in. And we would spend like 2 weeks on that project, right? It was fun. It was really cool. But 2 weeks on a labeling skill, that's all that is. So the state and your district and your principal want to know that you're going to go to labeling And you're going to go to identifying when you first start out, but you got to be pushing up into that creative and critical thinking. Very, very important there. Okay. Thought I'd share that with you. All right. So let's go ahead and go back to my presentation. Okay. So here we go. Let's look at the answer choices. This is number 2 in your study guide, free study guide. A, consult his peer teacher about the lesson. Okay. B, reference the state adopted standards for grade 9 biology. State adopted standards stands out every time on this exam because the state wants to know that you're using its standards to teach. So B is number 1 all day. C, determine what assessments he will need to administer. D, go online to see what other teachers are doing with their classrooms. All right, this is an example of if you're a brand new teacher, you might think A, B, C, and D are all good because of the question. Let's have a look here. Mr. Rodriguez is a new 9th grade biology teacher. He is starting to plan a lesson on ecosystems. What should be his first step? Well, if you're a brand new teacher, you might think, consult his peer teacher about the lesson, right? Because you probably have a peer teacher. And you're like, oh, I would talk to my peer teacher. Referencing the standards, that sounds good too. Determine what assessments. Okay, I've learned that in backward design. I need to figure out the assessments. That sounds good. Go online and see what other teachers are doing. I do that all the time. I go to YouTube, I go to Pinterest, I go to Instagram and steal other people's ideas. All of these look good. There's one that stands out for the first step, and that's state adopted standards, because those should be the driving force in how you plan your lessons. So making sure that you are using the standards is key. And this is always the correct answer. And again, all of them look good. B is the best. All right. Making sure you're looking at that. And this first step, these should be the things that, these are the goals. Students need to master the state adopted standards. So that's the goal. Then you go to the assessments. And I have a whole thing on backward design. I'm about to publish a video on it. And I have a whole thing on backward design in the PLT book and in my book. I forgot about this. Teach, a survival guide for new educators, which is my book. I'll talk to you guys about that when I end. I forgot about that. I need to tell you guys about that book. Okay, here we go. Let's look at number 3. Let's look at the answer choices. We have standards, objectives, rules, and rubrics. Can't do much there. Let's continue to work backwards and have a look at these bullets. Students will identify parts of a sentence, subject and predicate. Students will understand the difference between fragments and complete sentences. Okay, these are objectives. Let's talk about the difference between standards and objectives. Well, we know they're not rules and it's not a rubric, okay? But you may be in between A and B, standards and objectives, all right? So objectives are the small goals and the skills that students will acquire during the lesson. And once the lesson is over, they should be able to identify parts of a sentence and understand the difference between fragments and complete sentences. This is the expectation of the student. What is the student supposed to be able to do by the end of the lesson? These 2 things. These are also called learning targets. And some people get really upset about learning targets. Why do I have to write this on the board? If you just write these on the board, they do nothing. You are right. Like if you're just like, oh, here's my learning targets. I'm doing it because my principal told me to. But if you communicate these to students, they become very powerful tools in helping students understand what's expected of them. So for example, I say, hey guys, listen up. We're about to start our lesson. Let's go over the objectives today. First, by the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to identify parts of a sentence, a subject and a predicate. All right. The next one, you're going to be able to understand the difference between fragments and complete sentences. And I'm going to do everything I can to get you there. All right, let's go. And then we start. And maybe about 15 minutes in, we've figured out what the subject and the predicate is. And I might stop and say, hey, did we finish our first objective? Did we meet it? Can you guys identify parts of a sentence? Let's see. And maybe you do a quick activity. Yep, looks like you identified parts of a sentence. Check. And then maybe at the end of the lesson, do you guys know the difference between fragments and complete sentences? Talk to me. What does that mean? Somebody raises their hand, somebody else says something. Okay, great. Did we meet that objective? Yes, we did. That's how objectives are used properly in the classroom. Just on the board does nothing, but talking to your kids about it really, really helps. So in the beginning, you let them know what's expected of them. During the lesson, you might stop and say, hey, this is our objective. This is satisfying that objective. And then at the end of the learning, you say, did we meet our objectives today? Yes. If you didn't, there might be a third objective here that we didn't get to. And I would say, okay, this third objective, we didn't get to it. It's going to the top of the board tomorrow. So we'll work on that tomorrow. Very powerful stuff when we're talking about objectives. Now, standards are different. Standards are written by the state, and they are the big goals that students have for the end of the year after all of the learning has taken place. Now, they'll meet standards incrementally throughout the year. Obviously, they're going to meet some standards in the beginning. These objectives are taken from the standards. And I have a whole video on that as well, on how to use the standards to write objectives. I'm also working on a course that will be available this summer, all about lesson planning and how to use these objectives and how to implement them and all of that. I'm working on that now. So be on the lookout for that over the summer. It's going to be super comprehensive to help new teachers. But these are objectives. Standards usually have a number in front of them, a grade level, and they are much more overarching. These are a little more specific. So these are objectives, and she writes it on the board before the lesson starts. Okay, so these are objectives. All right, let's go to number 4. We have certain types of strategies here: reciprocal teaching, cooperative learning, modeling, and workshop. Can't do anything. Let's go ahead and read the question. A teacher has projected an essay in the front of the class. The students watch as she goes through the essay, deleting fragments and revising sentences. The teacher is using what technique? Okay, this is modeling. Modeling. This is part of explicit instruction. Also, think about that. Teacher standing in front of the room, teacher led. I'm doing the work. Students are watching. I am showing them how to do something. Modeling is such an important tool. Modeling is even important when we're trying to do classroom management and show students how to come into the room properly. You got to show them as the teacher. You walk in the room and say, okay, I'm putting my backpack down, or this is how you revise a sentence, or this is how you do a math problem. Modeling is a good word on this exam, and it's a really good practice in the classroom. You got to show them. Reciprocal teaching is when students become the teacher. So it's kind of like they've already gotten it. Maybe they've worked on revising sentences a lot over the last week or so. And maybe you have students work in group where one student is kind of guiding the group, becoming the instructor, and you're just walking around available if they need you. That's reciprocal teaching. It's student led, and it involves higher skills. Looks like they're just starting this. If I'm modeling, we're probably just starting this skill. Cooperative learning is a fancy name for group work, but on this exam, make sure that you're choosing answer choices where cooperative learning is structured and very organized. Get into groups is not structured and organized. And you know, if you've done that, the kids just totally turn into wild animals, right? So cooperative learning, everybody has a job. Typically, cooperative groups are small, no more than 5. Everybody's responsible for the learning. The teacher is walking around the room, available for questions. If you go sit down at your desk and work on some things that you definitely do not have time to do, I understand we all need that moment. But if you sit down at your desk, the kids are not working in their cooperative groups. You got to be up, walking around in order for it to be effective. But that's not what's going on here. She is modeling. And writing workshop is a part of cooperative learning, where students are in a workshop together in a small group, and they're trading papers, or they're helping each other grade their papers. They're giving a peer review. They're talking about what they like or dislike about the writing. Super helpful. Writing workshops should be practiced. You can't just expect kids to get into a writing workshop. That's something that should be practiced and guided. There should be a lot of modeling if you're having kids work in workshops, and a lot of expectations set. Also notice B and D are kind of the same answer. Cooperative learning and writing workshop are essentially the same thing, because a writing workshop is cooperative learning. So if I'm thinking like a test maker here and not a test taker, I would cross off B and D because I can only have one correct answer. And in this case, B and D are pretty much the same. But that leaves us with C, modeling. The teacher is modeling. All right, last one before we get into the constructed response. Let's start with the answer choices. A, plan, teach, and practice daily routines and procedures for transition and classroom activities. 100% yes, yes, yes. If you see an answer choice like this on the exam, it is the correct answer. First of all, these words, practice, routines, and procedures, is in the test specs, I think 3 times. So the test specification is a document that shows you everything that's on the exam. So all you have to do is go to Google and type in Praxis PLT Study Companion. Or if you're taking the PPR in Texas, Texas PPR test specifications, okay? And in it are all the skills you're responsible for. This daily routines, practice, procedures comes up so much for this exam and others like it. So if you see these words on the exam, yes, all day. Let's have a look at B. Send home reminders to parents about classroom expectations to work on at home. Do we do this in real life? Sure we do. But really, we can't rely on the parents to do our classroom expectations at home. I understand you need support from parents. I know how hard it can be when you don't have support from parents, but really what we do in our classroom is on us, and we have to remember that. So on this exam, that's never going to be the right answer. C, assign homework right away. No, homework is a bad word on this exam, typically because it is assigned to students who struggle. And homework is not going to help students who are struggling. Extra work at home doesn't necessarily help students who are struggling, okay? If they do not finish classwork in a timely manner, I mean, yeah, that would be homework, but practice daily routines and procedures is so much better than C, all right? Crossing it off. D, have students sign behavior contracts to reduce the number of disruptions. No, we don't need, well, I shouldn't say that. You may need it. But when you have very solid routines and procedures in your classroom for coming into the classroom, getting their papers, getting into groups, when you're doing direct instruction and you have practiced this and the kids are like, they totally understand what is expected of them, you don't need a lot of behavior contracts. I was a teacher for a long time. Whenever I had practiced daily routines and procedures in my classroom, things went so much better and I had very few behavioral problems. I still had a couple of kids who were always pushing my buttons, but for the most part, practice routines and procedures helps with classroom management over anything else. According to research, the most effective way to maximize instructional time, A, all day, and not just for the test, but in real life. All right, let me stop sharing there really quickly and take some questions here. Would we get the webinar record after this? Yes, Rama B, we send you an email and you're going to get the webinar replay. Now, if you're watching this in the future, hello future, you already got it because when you signed up, you got an email. Okay. Okay. Somebody's asking, I took the Praxis 5025. Is this the correct webinar for me? I was told PLT 5621. Yes. So if you are an elementary or a pre-K teacher, you took the 5025, you would take the PLT 5621, but this is going for all the PLTs. Okay. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So we look good here. Yes. This is for anybody who is taking any PLT, any level. All right. All right. So what we were talking about there was good words, how to eliminate bad words. This exam is very good for that. Now we need to talk about the actual constructed response. Now the constructed response, is 25% of your grade for this test. Now, if you're taking the 5625, you don't have a constructed response. You just have extra multiple choice. Lucky you, you don't have to write the essay. But if you are taking the 5621, 5622, 5623, 5624, you will have to write a constructed response. Now, what I'm going to talk to you today is going to be good really for any exam. The PLT covers most exams. I see some people in here, I'm taking the 5001. That is good. It's good to be here, even if you're taking the 5001, because there are scenario questions on the 5001. There are reading questions on the 5001. There are also routine questions on the 5001. And the test taking strategies I'm showing you here today is going to help you with that. So I'm really glad you're here. Okay, so let's talk about the constructed response. So when we are taking the constructed response, we want to continue to work backwards. Let's have a look at the free study guide really quick so I can show you what I'm talking about here. So let's go to the free guide. All right. So your constructed response is going to look something like this. You are going to have a big scenario here, and then you're going to have it could be just 2 bullets. You could have 2 questions, so a total of 4 bullets. It doesn't really matter. You're going to have different things going on here. Now, really quickly, I want you to start with your task first. We need to start here, because if you start reading this whole scenario here, you're going to get lost in it. And then when you go to read the questions, you're going to have to reread the scenario. Start with the task first. You're going to get some scratch paper, jot down some ideas. And I'm going to show you what I jotted down for mine. But just look at the task first. So let's do that first here in blue. Question 1. In the objectives, Ms. Rhodes wanted students to identify and discuss different features of the Earth. Identify 2 modifications she can make to the lesson to achieve these objectives. and explain how each modification can help improve on meeting the objectives. So she's got some objectives, and apparently they must not be that great. We need some modifications on that. And so let's be sure that we can do that. All right. Number 2, in the introduction of the scenario, it mentions that Ms. Rhodes wants to make cooperative groups an integral and regular part of learning process. Identify 2 areas of professional learning Ms. Rhodes can seek out to achieve her goal. And for each of the professional learning, identify how that would help her achieve the goal. So basically what we're doing is we're taking 2 modifications here and we're explaining why they're important. So we're being specific. What 2 things can she do and why will they help? And the same thing here. What 2 things can she do? What 2 classes or professional development can she take? And why is it important? All right. So we probably have a new teacher here. She might be struggling a little bit. Okay. Now let's have a look at what's going on. So we have Ms. Rhodes is a 2nd grade teacher who is planning for a science lesson about Earth's features. She's working on effective cooperative learning, and she wants to make it an integral part of her classroom, like it said in the thing. All right. Here are the lesson objectives. Students will work in groups to use clay to make models of the Earth. Okay. Students will discuss different features of the Earth using their clay Earth models. And 3, students will identify the features of Earth. All right. We have some skills here. I might change up these objectives. So it's like students will work in cooperative groups to build models of the Earth. I don't know. I might change the verbs up a little bit. They're not bad. All right, let's have a look at the notes from the peer teacher. So it looks like she's being observed by the peer teacher. All right, Ms. Rhodes begins the lesson by telling students they will work in cooperative groups to mold clay Earth models. All right, they're working with clay. Disastrous. Bringing out the clay. Okay, the students get really excited and start to talk and jump up and down. All right, of course, because you're like, we're going to work with clay. So what are the kids going to do? Completely lose it. She tells students to go to their group tables. These have been pre-assigned. Okay, I like pre-assigned because when you say to kids, get in some groups, they don't do that. Even adults don't do that. So they need explicit instruction. It takes 5 minutes to get the students in the correct groups. Okay, this tells me she does not have good procedures in place for getting into groups. It shouldn't take that long. It should take 20 seconds at most, 10, 20 seconds at most. The clay is already on the table and the students begin playing with it right away. Well, of course, you tell students to get in their groups, they get in and there's a big thing of clay on there. They're for sure going to touch it unless you've communicated the expectation and practiced the procedure on what to do. So we got some issues here with classroom management. Ms. Rose says, boys and girls, if you touch the clay now, we won't be able to do this activity. So please leave the clay alone until I say it's time to use it. Okay, that's not going to work. She goes through the instructions for the activity. You will mold clay into little models of Earth. Use the picture to display it on the board, project it on the whiteboard, blah, blah, blah. All right, so let's see what happens. 4 students immediately begin to grab the clay and smush many different colors together. 3 students are confused as to what to do and are frustrated. 5 students begin to mold the clay and follow directions. Okay, we got 5. That's good. And the last one, Ms. Rhodes walks around the room and assists students in their group. After 20 minutes, she wraps up the activity by asking students to share their process. Most students don't have a lot to say regarding the objectives. 2 students are upset because their clay figures did not turn out the way they wanted them to. All right, so a couple red flags here. Number 1, there were no procedures and routines in place before she started this activity. Even adults would need explicit instruction on this. I have done professional development for teachers, and if I don't have explicit instruction, they get very frustrated because they want to know exactly what to do. Some teachers and students are like, just, I'll do my thing. I'm cool. But most people need a set of steps. So there could have been steps to the process here. She maybe should have gone over the objectives and then gone over the procedures and routines for getting into groups. She probably should have modeled how to use the clay, what to do. Just saying use the picture to mold your clay is not enough for little kids or anybody for that matter. So she did not use explicit instruction here. And this is a mistake we all make. You have to fall on your face a lot and then you figure it out. So it's okay. All right, here's the post-observation conference between Ms. Rhodes and her peer teacher. Ms. Rhodes knows the activity did not meet the lesson objectives. She is frustrated that the students do not listen when she tries to do something fun with them. I hear that a lot from teachers. We can't do anything fun because they don't listen. Well, maybe we need to practice routines and procedures. I am not saying that kids are not difficult, and they are. But when we have clear expectations and practice routines and procedures, it usually goes a lot better. She mentions that she may not be able to do cooperative learning with this class of students. She references her student teaching experience and how the clay activity worked so well when she and another teacher did this, okay? Well, she probably skipped a few steps and doesn't realize it. All right, so now we're in the question one. In the objectives, Ms. Rhodes wanted students to identify 2 modifications she can make to the lesson objectives, to the lesson to achieve these objectives. All right, so let's go ahead and have a look at, let's go here, what I'm going to do here. All right. So here are the 2 things she can do. And then the second part of it is going to be, how does it help her lesson? That was what, let's go back here. Explain how each modification can help to improve the lessons. All right. So let me go here. All right. So the first thing, well, here's my map. Here's what I thought of when I was reading it. The first thing she needs is explicit instruction. She's got to tighten it up. And we all learned this the hard way. I learned it the hard way. Okay. They need steps on how to shape the clay. They need clear expectations. She needs to show them, okay, there's going to be clay on your table. Before you touch the clay at all, I want you to sit down and look at me. And she might even walk over to the table and show them exactly what she wants them to do. Here I am. I'm going into my group. I can see my name is on my group. Okay, I'm sitting down. Everybody look at me. Am I touching the clay? No. Am I playing with the clay? No. Am I looking at the clay? No. I'm looking at the teacher, right? So you might have to model that, okay? Then when it gets to the point where she has to show them how to do the clay, she might take out that picture and say, okay, I'm going to use this picture to kind of mold my clay. And when I need help, I'm going to raise my hand. And there might be some other instructions in there as well. But we have to show them what to do and set clear expectations. Okay, here are my expectations for this activity. Number 1, you are not going to, well, we'll leave it in positive language. I have a hard time with this one. We are going to sit in our seats and avoid touching the clay until I am done with instructions. Saying don't touch the clay, they say is bad. So put it in positive. Avoid touching the clay. Don't touch the clay, kids, until I'm done talking to you. Okay. And maybe another expectation. We are going to listen to instructions before going to the next step, whatever it is, right? Those expectations might even be written on the board where we can go through and check mark them like a checklist, whatever works. Different things work with different students. And the second paragraph was number 2, which was, let's go back to, I should have put these on my thing. Identify 2 areas of professional learning and why that would help her. Okay. So question number 2 is going to be, oh, I'm sorry. These are the 2 things. I'm sorry. Go back. Explicit instruction and practice routines. Again, we are going to use practice routines for group work because she wants to use cooperative learning. And she's saying things like, I can't do cooperative learning with these kids. That's because there aren't practice routines and procedures. Let's do that one first, and then I'll go to the professional learning. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. All right, explicit instruction. Let's have a look at question 1. Here we go. Ms. Rhodes can modify the lesson plan or the lesson by providing more precise and detailed instructions at the beginning of the activity. Instead of simply telling students to mold the clay into models of earth, she can break down the task into smaller steps. Notice that I said she needs explicit instruction or more detailed instruction. And then I said, for example, I've got for example here. She can demonstrate how to shape the clay into different features of the earth, such as mountains, oceans, and continents. Notice that I didn't just say, oh, she needs explicit instruction. I tell the reader of my essay how she can do that. Words like, for example, for instance, and then using pieces of the scenario in your writing is really good. They want specifics, not just generalizations. So we started off a little general. Precise and detailed instructions. Yes, she needs to beef up her explicit instruction. And then I say specifically what she can do. Okay. And then I say providing, and here we go with why does it help? Providing visual aids or step-by-step guides can help students understand what is expected of them and how to achieve the objective of identifying Earth's features. Finally, explicit instruction will help students understand Ms. Rhodes' expectations and setting them up for success. So notice that the last 2 sentences satisfy that second part of the constructed response where it says, why is this effective, or how will this help her achieve her objective? Because doing this will help them understand what's expected of them and to help them achieve the objective. All right. Now the next one, because we needed 2 strategies. So I'm breaking it up into 2 paragraphs. Explicit instruction is my first paragraph, and established and practice routines and procedures for cooperative learning is my second. And then I'm going to say why it's important. Here we go. Ms. Rhodes can modify the lesson by establishing practice routines for cooperative learning before starting the activity. We have to practice cooperative learning before we do cooperative learning. So this has got to be, okay, beginning of the year, there are going to be times where we do cooperative learning or group work. Let's go over that procedure. And then you practice it. You model it. You have the kids sit in their seat and I say, okay, now it's time to do the steps to cooperative learning. What do? We get up, we push in our chair, we go to our group, we sit down, we look up and wait for instruction. And you have them do it like 4 or 5 times until they get the procedure. When you do that, it really works. Instead of assuming students understand working effectively in groups, she can explicitly teach and model cooperative learning behaviors and expectations. For example, here we go with the example. She can introduce routines such as taking turns, listening to others' ideas, and asking for help. And here comes the important thing. Why is this going to help the kids? By practicing these routines regularly, students will develop the skills and habits necessary for successful collaboration, which can improve their ability to identify and discuss different features of the earth. Notice I brought it back to the objective here, and I brought it here as well. That was part of the question. It said, how is this going to help her meet her objectives? Well, if they're a hot mess and can't get into cooperative learning, they're not meeting the objectives. They don't care about the Earth's features. They're acting crazy. But if we can establish routines and procedures, that becomes second nature. And now we can focus on the learning. Learning does not take place without routines and procedures, period. Any seasoned teacher will tell you that. Any good teacher will tell you that. All right. So that's question number 1. Let's go back. Let me just have a look here. So we finished this. Did we meet our expectations? Here are our objectives. Identify 2 modifications she can make. Did we do 2 modifications? Yes, we did. Explicit instruction and establish routines and procedures. And did we explain how each modification can help improve on meeting the objective? Yes, we did. At the end of both paragraphs, we said how this would work. All right, good. Now we're on question 2. This one is about the professional learning. Identify 2 areas of professional learning Ms. Rhodes can seek out. And for each one, how would that help her achieve her goal? 2 things. All right, so here is what I wrote down. Let me just move this around. Okay, this is what I wrote down for mine. Okay, so I have, oops, I don't have it. It's not in here, is it? No, it's not in here. All right, let me just write it down. Let me add a blank slide. Sorry, we're on the fly. We are live. Let me just, this is for secondary. Okay. So this is going to be my map for the second question. Okay. So let me go back here and just write it down. So identify 2 areas of professional development, 2 PD areas, and why it helps. Okay. All right. So I think the 2 areas of instruction, let's go here, is classroom management. Sorry about my bad handwriting, you guys. I wasn't expecting to write today. Classroom management. And what was the second one that I want to do here? Let's go to differentiated instruction. Okay. Differentiating instruction. These are 2 things that you can always use for if they're asking you to choose professional development. Both are really important and easy to write to. So classroom management is always good for anybody. There are great opportunities out there to get better at classroom management, no matter how seasoned you are. And then, of course, differentiated instruction to meet the needs of every student. When they're grading your essay, they're going to love to see things like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and have a look at what I wrote. Okay. So these are the professional development training she's going to do. And how is that going to help her meet the objective that was to integrate cooperative learning as part of her, main instruction. She said she wants to make it an integral part. But what happened was it blew up in her face and she was like, I can't do cooperative learning anymore. Not true. She just needs some help and professional development will help her. Let's have a look at this paragraph. Ms. Rhodes can seek professional learning opportunities focused on classroom management. All right. I state in the first sentence exactly what she needs, particularly those related to cooperative learning, because that was her goal, more cooperative learning. By learning effective techniques for organizing and managing cooperative groups, she can create more conducive learning environment where students are engaged and productive during group activities. I got specific. I'm talking about organizing them, managing them. That's specifics about the professional development. It's not just cooperative learning, professional development. It's about how do I organize it? How do I manage it? How do I help students move through the cooperative learning effectively? And then the last sentence, this knowledge will help her establish cooperative groups as a regular, successful part of the learning process in her classroom, which goes back to that first part of the scenario. She wants to do cooperative learning more in her classroom. So this hits that objective. Now let's do the second one. It wanted 2. All right. Training and differentiated instruction. This is important in any scenario. I don't care. You could use this anytime. Just back it up. I mean, pretty much every teacher wants to differentiate instruction so every kid can get it, so you could always write to this. This could be like a go-to for you. Ms. Rhodes can benefit from professional learning opportunities focused on differentiated instruction. By learning how to differentiate instruction based on students' individual needs, good words here, and interests and learning styles, she can better support diverse learners doing cooperative learning activities. Again, it goes back to cooperative learning because that was her goal. That's what she wanted to implement more and more. I'm using good words that I got from my study guide, differentiated instruction, individual needs and interests, learning styles. All of these came from the study guide. Remember, use the stuff from the study guide. Read the study guide and use it in your writing. It's all there for you. Okay. This will enable her to provide appropriate, good word, scaffolding and support to students who may struggle and with the activity, ultimately leading, and here is the part that says, why is she going to do this? Why is it important? To more successful implementation of cooperative groups as a regular part of her classroom routine, which goes back to what she wanted to do. So 2 things. Professional development on classroom management, how to handle kids in cooperative learning, how to get them to do what you want them to do. And the second, differentiated instruction, because each kid in that group probably has a different way of doing things with the clay. You had some kids who got it, right? 5 kids did it right. 2 kids were frustrated. Another 2 kids smushed all the colors together. You got kids with different things going on. Doesn't mean anyone is better or worse. They just deal with things differently. And so differentiated instruction is going to help her there. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the second one here. And this one is going to be the secondary. So this is going to be middle and high school. But even if you are elementary, I recommend you having a look at this. All right. So we have 2 questions again, question 1 and question 2. All right. I'm starting with the task first. Identify 2 modifications Mr. Sumner can make to his lesson to increase his effectiveness in category 2. All right, we have 2. Let me go ahead and, okay, I got it here. 2 things he needs to modify. And it looks like we have category 2 here. Teacher delivers instruction aligned to rigorous learning objective. All right, I found that. And then explain how each modification can help. So basically, they do this a lot. It's like, give me 2 things he can do, but then tell me why they're important. Tell me why they're effective. That's a thing on this test. All right. So always be prepared to write that, okay, he's going to do these 2 things and here's why he should, basically. Okay. And question number 2, identify 2 changes this teacher can do to address his feedback, to address the feedback. And for each change, identify how it might improve his instructional delivery. All right, I've set myself up, but I do need to read this. I don't really know what's going on yet. All right, so let's have a look here. Mr. Sumner is a 9th grade social science teacher in his 2nd year of teaching. Okay, so he's a new teacher pretty much. He's working on his lesson plans for the upcoming semester. He likes to get them done ahead of time so he can focus on classroom activities. All right, it's good to be proactive. He outlines lessons and activities based on the textbook. Red flag. I know we do this, but really we should be outlining them based on the standards, not the textbook. Okay, so this is a bit of a red flag for me. And the sequential chapters, just because it's in the textbook doesn't mean it follows the standards properly. All right, so let's have a look at what these plans look like. Week 1, read chapter 4, lesson 1, and complete the chapter questions. Okay, so it's kind of like the kids are doing all the work on their own here. Read chapter 1, answer the questions. Week 2, read chapter 4, lesson 2, complete the chapter questions. Group week 3, same thing. And then we have a test. Okay. I don't see any cooperative learning. I don't see any read aloud, think aloud. I don't see anything else except kids reading the chapter and then answering comprehension questions. Not very engaging. Week 5, same thing. Read chapter 5, lesson 1, questions. It's all repetitive and it's just the kids reading and answer questions. And then there's a test. There's no indication he's going over the test. There's no indication that he's using formative assessment. This is a red flag. All right, weekly activities. Maybe he changes things up here. Let's look at Monday. 40-minute movie and note-taking. Oh, absolutely not. Please don't do this. This will drive your principal crazy. It's okay to use movies, especially in social studies, but not 40 minutes, not the entire period. You're the teacher. Use the movie, use clips, make sure they're aligned to the standards, and then talk about it. Have an activity with it. Having students sit and watch movies. I mean, I'm not saying that good documentaries in social science can't be great. I mean, I love a good history doc, but that's not teaching and learning, okay? Tuesday, read the textbook and complete practice questions. Busy work. Wednesday, group work. Okay, good. Can you tell me a little more about this? This seems a little vague. Thursday, makeup day. Finish missing assignments. Oh, yes, the infamous makeup day. I used to have them too. This was, I am slammed. I need time at my desk. You guys have some things you need to make makeup day. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have makeup days. You just shouldn't call them makeup days in your lesson plan. Don't call them makeup days. Call them recursive instruction days where students get to go back and fix up skills that they are lacking. Figure out a better way to say it. Makeup day is a red flag. Okay. And Friday, a debate. Okay. Friday's a debate. That's cool. I'd like to know what the parameters for the debate are. What standards does the debate align with? What are we talking about? What skills are you looking for in the debate? This could be critical thinking. This could be a great thing, but I need more here. Okay. So the principal observes Mr. Sumner during a walkthrough and provides the following feedback. All right. So teacher demonstrates a solid grasp on the content. So he got a 3 on this. So he's probably a history buff, maybe a history major, and knows a lot about history. That's good. We need our secondary social studies teachers to know a lot about that. Content category 2, he only got a 1. Teacher delivers instruction aligned to rigorous learning objectives. Yeah, these objectives, first of all, I don't see any objectives. Second of all, this is not rigorous. This is busy work. So yeah, I would totally give that person a 1 as well. Category 3, teacher demonstrates strong pedagogical skills, balancing direct instruction with modeling, facilitating, and/or coaching. He only got a 2 because he didn't balance anything. It's all just independent work here and a chapter test, independent work and a chapter test. There was a debate here Friday, but the movie and the textbook, the teacher's not doing a whole lot of work here. That's what it says to me. I was an assistant principal. This would be a red flag. I would definitely probably judge this teacher the same way. All right. So observational notes. Students are compliant. Here's something to think about on this exam and in life. Compliance does not mean engaged. So they could be doing exactly what this teacher wants, but it doesn't mean that they're engaged or understanding. All right. And it says here, but engagement is low. Students are completing their assignments, but are not asking any questions. This is bad. We need them to ask questions. That's critical thinking. There are no objectives driving the instruction. Red flag. I did not see objectives displayed anywhere or discussed. Okay. So this guy has some work to do for sure. Let's go back to my map so we can see what I decided to do here. So the first one is identify 2 modifications Mr. Sumner can make to his lesson to increase his effectiveness in this one. Delivers instruction aligned to rigorous learning objectives. Okay. There are no objectives here. So we need to figure this out. So let's go to my thing. All right. So the first thing we want to do is use the standards to plan lessons and make decisions. Remember in the first part, he's using the textbook. He's not even looking at the standards. So that's important. This helps to meet the needs of each student because we have different students in that class and he's using a very blanketed approach and keep students on track with state learning goals. This is very important. So here's what I think he should do. I'm going to give some examples how, and this is why it's going to help. All right. Now, the second thing I want him to do is continually refer to the objectives and standards in the lesson. So even if he's showing the movie, he could stop the movie and say, hey, remember this objective here? Understand why the Allied powers got together to become an alliance in World War II. I'm not saying that's a real standard. Let's just pretend I'm making that up. I might say, that goes back to our objective, you guys, and they just answered it in the video. Look down at your response journals, write that down. You can use the video with the objectives to help students understand what they're learning and how to bring it back to the learning target. And then we have here, this allows students to determine if they've met the objective, and it's a way to collect data. It's a way to collect data. There's no data collection in his approach right now. All right, so here's what I would do. I would turn this into one big paragraph here. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. The first approach, let's see here. Okay, sorry. The first approach Mr. Sumner can take to improve in category 2 is to plan lessons using learning objectives aligned with the standards. Okay, this is going to stand out to the person grading your essay because you have standards in here and alignment. Good words. And here we get specific. For example, rather than planning his lessons for the entire semester, Mr. Sumner can plan incrementally, collect data to drive instructional decisions, and design rigorous lesson objectives that correspond with academic standards. What he's doing is he's getting them done ahead of time by using the textbook. Instead, he should be collecting data on students, what do they need, and planning accordingly. And here's the reason why it's going to help. This will ensure he meets the needs of all students while pushing students towards skills mastery. All right, question 1, check. First part of question 1, check. Here we go with number 2. The second thing Mr. Sumner can do is communicate those objectives throughout the lesson. That's this right here. Okay. For example, got specific again. As students engage in the lesson, Mr. Sumner can ask, have we met this objective? Referring back to the objective helps connect activities to the classroom learning targets. It is also a way to collect data to make further instructional decisions. So notice what I did here. I have the first approach, which satisfies the first strategy, right? And I say what it is, and then I get specific. For example, and then I say why it's going to work. Then I do the second thing right here, the second strategy. And then I say, for example, and then I say why it's going to work. Notice the pattern there. Patterns are good in your writing. Make it robotic, but be clear. The first thing he can do is this, and this is why it's important. The second thing he can do is this, and this is why it's important, right? Now, the second question, let's go back here, is identify 2 changes this teacher can do to address the feedback. So the principal mentions that student engagement is low and that there are no learning objectives, okay? So identify 2 changes the teacher can do to address this, to make it better. And for each change, identify how it will improve. All right, so let's go back here. Let's go to my map. 2 things to engage students. During direct instruction, use essential questions. That goes beyond just answering questions in the textbook. Let's use essential questions. This keeps students engaged. Gets them thinking critically. Instead of sitting there watching a movie, think critically, ask questions. It'll help with that debate as well. Number 2, use cooperative learning to increase critical thinking. So instead of them just sitting there answering questions in their textbook, why don't we do some cooperative learning, structured cooperative learning? This increases engagement and taps into students' higher order thinking skills. All right, let's have a look. We need 2 things here for question 2. Mr. Sumner's class focuses mainly on finishing textbook tasks and busy work. I mentioned that when I was reading it. Here comes the thing. Mr. Sumner can incorporate questioning techniques during direct instruction to increase student engagement and help students interact with the material. Here I get specific. For example, during direct instruction, Mr. Sumner can ask essential questions to get students thinking more critically about the material rather than just finishing book work. All right, first strategy is done. This will increase engagement and understanding of the material, and this is why it's important. Okay, second tactic. Another tactic Mr. Sumner can use to increase student engagement is cooperative learning. He can present students with rigorous material and encourage them to work together to use their higher order thinking skills. Good word, good word. This will also increase student engagement, good word, and critical thinking as an essential part of a rigorous curriculum. Now, could you use anything? Sure. You just have to make sure you get specific and defend why you're using it. You don't have to use these examples. All right. So let me go back to here. Stop sharing. All right. So that's how I would approach the constructed response. You need practice. In the book, I have lots of practice constructed response examples. Okay. Now, if you see yourself in any one of those teachers, I was those teachers too. When I first started, I showed movies all the time in science class because I thought the movies were cool. And the kids liked them, but I needed to do more, right? I got better. I have had really bad classroom management. When I first started teaching, I took over in the middle of the year for a guy who retired. And the class I had like 4 or 5 subs before I came in to take over the class. It was a nightmare. I had to work on routines and procedures for 2 full weeks. I didn't do any learning until they got their routines and procedures down. And I was a high school teacher. So when they came to my class every day and they were really tough on me, I was like, okay, let's practice coming into the classroom, because they weren't doing it. They were coming in like crazy people. And I just did it over and over again until they learned to come in the classroom, sit down, and I finally got them to do it. It took a long time. So it's really, really important to do those routines and procedures. I have a book called Teach, a Survival Guide for New Educators. It's got lots of 5 stars on Amazon. I highly recommend it if you're brand new. I go over a lot of the things that I talk about in this presentation on how to actually apply them. And I have really funny stories about me falling on my face and then fixing it and hopefully becoming a better teacher. So if you're interested in this, it's available on Amazon. We'll hook it up in the email that we send you guys today. All right. So let me go in here. Are each of these taken separate times or at the same time? Okay. I think what you're asking, Darielle, is, do you take the constructed response all at once? Yes, it's graded separately, and you both of them, you have one time frame to do both. So you have to manage your time. You don't like complete one and then the clock starts again for the next. You have to complete them both at the same time. Okay. I feel like I always blank out when I get to the constructed response. Okay, Izzy, totally. Here's what I think happens with a lot of people. They think of the constructed response as separate, but you've just spent the whole time studying this study guide. You know all these strategies. Use the good words in the study guide and apply them. Another thing you can do is have some go-to things. So for example, think about the constructed response in a few different ways. And let me share my screen one more time. All right, let's go back to here. I'm going to show you one thing before we leave today. I'm a little bit over today, but that's okay. Oh, let me go here. Okay. The constructed response is going to come from any one of these categories. Okay. It's going to come from students as learners. It's going to come from instructional practices. It's going to come from assessment, and it's going to come from professional development and leadership in the community. Now you could so let's go to, I have to go here. So notice this, you're going to get 4 constructed response questions here. Okay. 4. 1 to 2 are going to come from students as learners. You're definitely going to get a constructed response about kids learning stuff and how we can make it better for them. So you might want to have in your mind differentiated instruction, clearly stated or clearly practice routines and procedures. Because remember, kids can't learn unless there are routines and procedures. So pick 3 or 4 things from the study guide that go with students as learners and get good at talking about it. Get good at explaining it. All right. Because you're definitely going to have 1 or 2 from just that. The instructional process. So planning, you're going to have 1 or 2 questions from that. Assessment, you could have none from assessment, or you could have 1 from assessment. And professional development and leadership, you could have 1 or none. Okay. So that's really important. So just remember, when you are working on your constructed response, go to the study guide and grab some things in the quick tips. Let me just show you. Let's go to students as learners. Let me just show you real quick. I talk about Piaget and stuff like that, but let's just go. Okay, Bloom's. I've got Bloom's taxonomy here. So maybe you talk about pushing students towards critical thinking. Maybe that's your thing. And so if you get a students as learners, you're going to incorporate that somehow. Let's say, metacognition. The teacher could increase students' metacognition and just pull from here. Go in and find some areas that you like, that you're good at, and use that because you can apply anything to the constructed response, really. I could have turned those constructed responses into anything I wanted. So, this is more human development, but let me just keep going down here. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, prior knowledge, big one. Activating students' prior knowledge, helping students read better. Motivation. How do we motivate students? Self-confidence, get in here, find something that works. And remember, if it comes from the students as learners, you can use anything from this section because this whole book is aligned to the test specs. So all of that works. Okay. That will help you. All right. So hopefully that helps you understand. It's hard because what people tend to do is, let me stop sharing. What people tend to do is they think of the CR, the constructed response, as separate. It's not. You're taking everything you learned in the study guide and now you're applying it. Okay. Let's see. I was talking about the 5721, 5205, and 5025. I'm not sure what we're talking about here. Okay. Is it important to reference any theorists on the test? You can. It's not part of the rubric. You saw there in the task, it says identify 2 strategies and give a reason why. That's what you have to do. If they said give 2 theorists, you could, but I have yet to see that ever in the specs or anything. Like the theorists are on there. You might have a multiple choice. I don't know if you're going to be required to pull from a theorist. Remember, it's not a master's level writing task. It's just to show your knowledge in this area. You are a beginning teacher and you have to show beginning teacher entry level knowledge. Okay. I recently took the 5622 and went to the CR and my mind went blank. Should they be taken first? You can do them first if the computer allows you to do it. I would be careful with that because you could end up spending a lot of time on the CR and you could run out of time on the multiple choice. I would practice your writing, practice different scenarios, practice writing to different things in the book. I have several practice constructed response questions in the book for you to write to. And then once you write to it again in a different way. So like I answered explicit instruction and routines and procedures, I think it was. Now try something else and just keep writing to it. You have to practice the writing. It won't just happen. You have to practice it. And I've also learned this. A lot of people are good writers. Like people say, I'm a good writer. I write all the time. Some people are even like professional writers and they're like, I can't pass the constructed response. It's because they're asking you for a very specific task and you have to keep it very succinct. Tell the strategy you want the person to use to make it better. Give an example of how it might look and why it's important. Don't write a rendition of War and Peace because then the person grading it has to go look for all the answers. Spell it out. The first strategy he can use is this. For example, blah, blah, blah. This is effective because of this. The second strategy he can use is this. For example, blah, blah, blah. This is important because of this. Use that strategy because it'll make it easier on the grader and the grader will be able to find your answers. That's what they're looking for. Okay. All right. So looks like we're wrapping up now. If you have any questions, let me show you where you can get more free resources really quickly. First of all, of course, my free webinars, definitely check those out. Many of you have to take the Praxis core. I also have some pre-recorded. Some of you have to take the teaching, reading, special education. I'm also doing a 5001 on June 1. It's not ready yet. 5001 on June 1. It's not on the thing. It'll pop up here. So if you go to KathleenJasper.com, it's this tab here, free webinars. Always check back. I'm always doing something. And then over the summer, I'm going to do how to lesson plan, classroom management. I'm going to get you ready for the year. All right. Also, our online courses are amazing. Practice tests. I got these new 5001 practice tests. So if you want extra practice tests for the elementary ed, you can check them out here. Study guides. The PLT study guide is here. Let me go to the 5622. 1 second. So if you want the study guide, you can get it here, get a digital copy. Everything on our website is digital. This is emailed to you. And then you can also get it once you buy on your accounts page. You can see you can download your guides and access your online courses. So after you buy, you create an account. We pull that information from the account and your stuff will show up. This is how you access all your stuff. It will also come in an email. So you can get it all different ways, right? And then if you decide that you want, maybe you're not a digital download person, you want a physical copy. Well, you can go click that button there and it'll take you to our Amazon page and you can buy the physical copy. We can't give you discounts on Amazon because Amazon is the publisher and I can't give discounts on the books. But you can see here we have over 130 ratings, pretty much 5-star. And so you can have a look there at what people think. And you can go on our website and look there. Now, another place where you can go is my YouTube channel. And here I have lots of information for you guys. You can see I'm live right here, but I have latest videos, test strategy, really helpful for the PLT. I would watch these videos here, working backwards, good words, stuff like that. Teaching reading for those of you who are teaching reading, and then everything, essay, constructed response, all of that, lots of stuff here. And I even have a PLT playlist for you guys to access there. Also, I am on TikTok with shorter videos. I do a lot of different types of videos here. I love the shorter format. So much fun. So if you like shorter videos, you can go there. And of course, Facebook, we have a lot of people who follow us on Facebook. And you can see that we just share a lot of information, videos, blogs. We do these carousels we really like, where you can go here. And this is also on Instagram. So we just share, oops, sorry, I was in the wrong place. This is Facebook. So we have a lot of different carousels and ways to consume our content. You can see we've got a ton of people who follow us on Facebook. And of course, my book, Teach. Let me go to that really quickly. Let me go to this for you. Teach, Kathleen Jasper. I'll show you guys this one. So this book has done really well with our teachers. We have 58 ratings. I'm so happy that people love this book. I was scared to write it, but you can see people really like it. And it's available on Amazon. We'll link it up in the email that comes out to you guys, and you guys can go down here. And people have taken pictures with their book and stuff. I love it. It makes me so happy. I love to hear from teachers. Okay. All right. What would you recommend for people taking the principal certification? The SLLA 6990 program on my website. I have Anna, thank you for a question. I have a whole program for the SLLA. So check out my leadership videos, check out on YouTube. And I would also check out if you're taking the SLLA 6990. I don't know what state you're in, Anna, but that will help you out a lot. I was an assistant principal. I have a lot of knowledge in that area. So I wrote some books on that. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like that's it. I went a little over 15 minutes. Sorry about that, you guys. Remember, Teach, a survival guide for new educators. Also, the PLT study guide. Get that if you need extra stuff. Use the offer code on our website to do that. Remember, the free study guide you got is an abbreviated study guide. If you want the full study guide, go to our website or go to Amazon and grab that. We also have the online course. If you want the online course and you already bought the book, we will apply that. So just email us, let us know, send us a screenshot of your purchase with your name visible, please. And then we can add that to an offer code so that you can get that off, because the book comes with the course. So we like to go ahead and give that to you if you've already purchased the book. And I believe that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday. Go do something relaxing, and I'll see you next week for Praxis Core. Next weekend is Praxis Core. Have a great day.